Beneath the soil of modern America lies a secret that would shock the world. Long before Columbus, long before the Aztecs built Tenochtitlan, a civilization rose in the heart of North America that rivaled the great cities of medieval Europe. Then, without warning, they vanished. 20,000 souls simply walked away from the greatest city on the continent. They left behind pyramids, temples, astronomical observatories, and a mystery that has haunted archaeologists for over a century. This is the story of the Mississippian Empire and the ghost cities that refused to give up their secrets. In 1811, a young lawyer named Henry Brackenridge stood before Monks Mound in what is now Collinsville, Illinois. He was looking at the largest prehistoric earthen structure in the Americas, a pyramid that covered 14 acres at its base and rose 100 feet into the sky. It contained 22 million cubic feet of earth, moved one basket at a time, without wheels, without beasts of burden, without metal tools. Brackenridge called it the most celebrated of Indian antiquities, but when he reported his findings to the scientific establishment, they dismissed him. The prevailing theory was that Native Americans were incapable of such achievement. Surely these must be the work of a lost race, perhaps Vikings or ancient Phoenicians or the lost tribes of Israel. It would take another 150 years before archaeology revealed the truth. These were American-built, and the civilization that created them was staggering. Between 800 and 1600 CE, the Mississippian culture dominated eastern North America. From the Great Lakes to the Gulf of Mexico, from Oklahoma to the Atlantic coast, hundreds of communities built monumental architecture and participated in a vast trade network. But one city ruled them all. Cahokia, the beating heart of the Mississippi Empire. At its zenith around 1100 CE, Cahokia was home to an estimated 20,000 people, larger than London at the time. Another 30,000 lived in surrounding settlements, making this the first true metropolis north of Mexico. The city covered 6 square miles. 120 mounds rose from the floodplain, arranged with mathematical precision. At the center stood Monks Mound, a terraced pyramid where the paramount chief resided, literally above his subjects, closer to the sky. The Grand Plaza could hold tens of thousands for ceremonies. Residential neighborhoods sprawled outward in planned districts. Defensive wooden walls, palisades, surrounded the city center, rebuilt 4 times over the centuries. This was urban planning on a scale that wouldn't be seen again in North America until the founding of Philadelphia. To walk through Cahokia at dawn was to witness a civilization at its zenith. Smoke from cooking fires spiraled into the morning sky. The scent of roasting maize and fish hung in the air. In the plaza, young men played chunky, a gambling game where they rolled polished stone discs and threw spears to land closest to where the disc stopped. Fortunes were won and lost. Some men wagered everything they owned. Artisans shaped copper from the Great Lakes into ceremonial ornaments. Shell traders brought sacred whelk shells from the Gulf Coast, 700 miles away. These weren't simple exchanges. This was international trade. But the true power of Cahokia wasn't commerce. It was an ideology. The rulers claimed divine connection to the cosmos. They tracked the sun's movements with wooden henges, American stone henges that marked solstices and equinoxes. One such circle, discovered through archaeology, was called Woodhenge.
At sunrise on the spring equinox, the paramount chief would stand at the center while the sun rose directly over a designated post. To the gathered thousands, their leader commanded the heavens themselves. This was power made visible. This was architecture as theology. But Cahokia had secrets, dark secrets buried beneath the earth. In 1967, archaeologists excavated Mound 72, a ridgetop mound south of Monks Mound. What they found would rewrite everything we thought we knew about this civilization. A single man lay on a bed of 20,000 shell beads arranged in the shape of a falcon. Around him, mass graves, 272 people buried in carefully arranged pits. Many showed signs of ritual sacrifice. Young women, ages 15 to 25, buried together. Their bodies showed evidence of being strangled or having their throats cut. Some were buried alive, their bones positioned in ways that suggest they struggled. 4 men with their heads and hands cut off. 53 young women sacrificed and carefully positioned in rows. This wasn't war, this was a ceremony. The man on the beaded falcon? Most likely a paramount chief. When he died, he did not go to the afterlife alone. The power structure of Cahokia demanded blood. This was an empire, and the empire always has a cost.
Around 1200 CE, something changed. Tree ring data tells us the climate shifted. Droughts became more frequent. The Mississippi River's floodplain, once Cahokia's greatest asset, became unreliable. The city had grown beyond sustainability. 20,000 people required massive food surpluses. Archaeological evidence shows they had stripped nearby forests for timber and fuel. Soil erosion increased. Game animals disappeared from the archaeological record. But the ecological crisis alone doesn't explain what happened next. The city rebuilt its defensive palisade 4 times in 2 centuries. Each time it was stronger, more towers, taller walls. This wasn't defense against animals. This was preparation for human attack. By 1200, Cahokia was a city under siege, not from external enemies, but from its own hungry people. The surrounding villages had had enough. The trade network that once enriched the empire became its noose. Tribute stopped flowing to the center. The paramount chiefs, who claimed divine power, could not make it rain, could not restore the forests, could not feed the people. Their cosmic authority shattered. Between 1200 and 1350, Cahokia died. Not in conquest, not in catastrophe, in exodus. Family by family, they walked away. Some moved to smaller Mississippian communities that survived for centuries longer. Others dispersed entirely, their descendants becoming the diverse tribes of the American Southeast and Midwest, the Osage, the Quapaw, the Pawnee, the Omaha. By 1350, Cahokia was a ghost town. The Grand Plaza stood empty. Ceremonies ceased. The wooden hinges rotted and fell. Wind whistled through abandoned neighborhoods. The forest returned. Within a generation, the mighty city was being swallowed by wilderness. Within 2 generations, memory began to fade. When French explorers arrived 500 years later, local indigenous people knew the mounds were ancient and sacred, but the knowledge of who built them and why had become legend, not history. The greatest city in pre-Columbian North America had vanished so completely that its very existence would be denied. Cahokia was not alone. The Mississippian world was dotted with ceremonial centers, each with its own story of rise and fall. Etowah in Georgia,
6 mounds arranged around a plaza, at its peak home to several thousand people. It thrived even as Cahokia declined, lasting until 1550. Moundville in Alabama, 26 mounds on 300 acres along the Black Warrior River, the second largest site after Cahokia. It became a regional power center after Cahokia's fall. Then it too was abandoned around 1450. Spiro Mounds in Oklahoma, the King Tut of the Arkansas Valley. In the 1930s, looters dynamited the mounds and discovered the richest cache of Mississippian artifacts ever found. Thousands of objects, shell engravings, copper plates, ceremonial weapons, scattered to private collections before archaeologists could intervene. Each site tells the same story: rise, flourish, fall, abandon. By 1600, when European diseases swept ahead of colonists, the great Mississippian centers were already gone. The survivors lived in smaller, dispersed communities. When Hernando de Soto marched through the southeast in 1540, he encountered the last gasps of Mississippian chiefdoms, some still powerful, but all shadows of what had been. Within a century, European diseases would finish what drought and instability had begun. Today, Cahokia Mounds is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. 72 mounds survive out of the original 120. The rest were plowed under by farmers who had no idea they were destroying pyramids. One mound was topped with a monastery, hence the name Monks Mound. Modern descendants of the Mississippians, including the Osage Nation, maintain cultural connections to these sites. They never forgot. When archaeologists claim to discover what happened here, indigenous historians remind them, we have always known. The story of Cahokia forces us to confront uncomfortable truths. This was not a simple society. It was complex, hierarchical, sometimes brutal. It was capable of greatness and atrocity, like every civilization humans have ever built. And it challenges the narrative of American history. Before Plymouth Rock, before Jamestown, before Columbus, there was this: sophisticated urban planning, long-distance trade, astronomical knowledge, art, power, empire. 10,000 years of indigenous American innovation led to Cahokia. It deserves to be spoken of in the same breath as the Maya, the Inca, the ancestral Puebloans.
But questions remain. We may never know the full truth. What language did they speak? The knowledge died with them. What were their songs? Silence. What name did they call their city? Cahokia is borrowed from an unrelated tribe that moved to the area centuries later. Did the paramount chief standing atop Monks Mound, watching his city empty, understand what was happening? Did he know he was the last? Did he order the final ceremonies, perform the final rites, and then walk away? Or did he stay, a king without subjects, maintaining rituals for cosmic forces that no longer answered? We'll never know. What we do know is this: they built something magnificent. They reached for the sky. They organized thousands in common purpose. And when it all fell apart, they survived by doing the hardest thing any civilization can do. They walked away from power. They chose dispersal over collapse. They became something new. The ghost cities of the Mississippi Empire stand silent. The pyramids endure. The mysteries wait in the earth. And the story, the true story of American civilization, is far older and stranger than we were taught.